Here we are on Amazon's website looking at various compact flash cards. This one's 64 gigabytes. You can get them in varying sizes. Of course, the smaller capacities like 4 gigabytes or 8 are becoming more and more rare and more expensive depending on where you find them. But I'm using the 64 gigabyte here as an example, the SanDisk, which I have several of these, because the M.2 SATA SSD that I purchased is 64 gigabytes as well. And as you can see, they sit around $60. Now this is Canadian, and it varies several dollars on either side depending on what brands you go with. I would recommend SanDisk. I seem to have a lot of luck with those. The Lexars aren't bad either. They seem to have good compatibility with the Amiga hardware. So with this, of course, you need an interface to plug it into, which is relatively cheap. It is $11. So this is the IDE ribbon cable plugs in here. So it goes IDE to the motherboard. That's on the Amiga 1200 and Amiga 600. And on Amazon, it's a whopping $12 Canadian, thereabouts. So we're sitting at around $70, $75, let's say, roughly, to have this combination of a 64 gigabyte compact flash card mixed in with the adapter that you need. Now here is the Transcend, which is also a pretty good brand name, which I've used before and I have had great success with. As you can see, the 64 gigabyte here, the M2 mSATA, I should say, M.2 mSATA SSD is 64 gigabytes, so about the same price as the compact flash card is. And the adapter for it requires a bit more electronics, of course, to do the conversion from SATA to IDE, is $26. So it's about $11 more. But that's not too bad, considering that this is recent, it's current, the hardware is new. You don't have to worry about, looking for compact flash cards, which are becoming more and more rare. These are off the shelf, readily available, and you can get them in a large variety of sizes. So all in, roughly the same price, but one thing, actually, I go back to what I purchased here. I could have actually got this for less if I went to the 128 gigabyte version. For some reason, it's $15 cheaper. Oh well, but 64 is enough. But as you can see, it would actually come in at about the same price as the compact flash. So basically, what I'm saying is the M.2 mSATA SSD 64 gigabytes with adapter is about the same price as the compact flash variants that you can get. So that is that. So we're going to head back to the 1200 and we're going to see how all of this actually fits and gets up and running. I will meet you back there very shortly. And here we are at the Amiga 1200, the partially assembled Amiga 1200. If you hear noise in the background, it's my fridge. I apologize. In the past, I have turned it off, but then I forget to turn it back on again, and then everything kind of melts, which is bad, because that defies the purpose of having a fridge. So bear with me. It will shut off eventually, and come back to life when it needs to. But enough of that. This is not about the fridge. This is about this. So my partially assembled Amiga 1200, right here, I will reveal to you, I'll unplug this keyboard here, one moment, and try not to break things. There we go. And of course there's the compact flash. Now you can have several different variants of the interface. This is the one with the cable as if it was hooked up to a hard drive, but this is using the compact flash. In this case it's a 16 gigabyte, and like you've seen before, it'll be a 64 that'll be taking its place, but not a compact flash with the M.2 SSD that's going to be installed, the mSATA as they call it. And so that's what that looks like. So what we need is the actual hardware that I showed you. So I need to move this keyboard out of the way, and I shall grab, sorry about that, parts. There's the parts right there, and I will get to that in one moment. And computer is slightly in the way. There we go. And we will zoom in on the action here. So there is Mr. Mouse. Excuse me. There we go. So there is the M.2 SATA, or mSATA as they call them. It's the M.2 variant. Now do not, when you purchase these, make sure it says SSD, mSATA, because NVMe will not work in this adapter at all. So it will do absolutely nothing. So make sure it is an mSATA, or sometimes called M.2, because that's a form factor, SATA. So SATA is the most important part. Now this is the 50 millimeter version, which you need to get that size. So it's the smaller size. The larger ones won't fit into this case here. So this is the drive that we're going to be using, and this is the case here. Let me open this up. I think I said case several times now. Let me try to get this open. Yeah. Out of the bag. Okay, there you go. Nice hard plastic case there, and you turn around, and of course that's the bottom of the circuit board. Of course it has a piece of tape here, so you don't short anything out, because it's going to be exposed parts of the pins here that are soldered to the board, but that'll prevent it from shorting out inside the Amiga or whatever apparatus you decide to install this into. So this also comes with all the screws needed, as I can get this into frame. Maybe let me just zoom out a bit. There we go. Get both of them into frame. So there we go. So I'm going to install this into that. I'm going to get these out of the packages, and I'll show you how easy it is to install. I will be right back. Okay, we have everything pretty much out of its packages. That's just simply inside the bubble packaging. I can get that out in a second. So you basically have the M2 SATA right there, and you have the M2 SATA IDE adapter board, and of course you have the case with a bunch of screws. And it's nice that it comes with a case, kind of protects it from various things, and plus it also makes it look nice, I guess, somewhat. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these two screws out. These are the mounting screws to go into here. So I'm going to try to keep this all in frame for you guys so I don't get massively confused, and actually so you don't get massively confused. And of course it dropped on the board there, but anyways, there's the other one here that comes out. So there's two of them on the top. So just get that one and put these aside. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this out of the package here. So I'll just do this off camera in a second. Yes, because there's more room off camera. There we go. And there is the M.2 SATA, or the mSATA. I keep saying M.2 is a form factor, so I'm just going to say mSATA from now on to avoid confusion. So hopefully that will focus, and excellent. So this will get installed quite easily into here, and only goes in one way. It's keyed, so don't force it. And I always like to reinsert it one more time just in case, make sure it's seated properly, and they go on a slight angle, I should say. There, so that's in. As you can see, it springs up, and that's in there. So what we're going to do now is simply get that out of the way there. Simply get the whatchamacallit, the screws into place. So it's pretty easy to do, and I wish I had a magnetic screwdriver, because this would make life a lot easier. So just push that down, hold it into place, and don't quite tighten that up 100%. Get it close so you have at least a bit of room to line up the other one. Put the second one in here. It is partially a magnetic, not very strong, but enough to do the task. There we go. And screw this one in. And I always like to, just before I push on this, just make sure it's in. And I don't overdo it, obviously. And then tighten it down here, nice and snug. And then down here, nice and snug. There we go. So as you can see, that is installed rather nicely. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into this case right here, which is pretty easy to do. Let me get back a bit here. Okay. So I'm going to take this here like so. As you can see the opening, just flip it over and line it up right there. And then the 4 screws will simply go here, 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 and here. I won't do that on camera. It's simply me putting in 4 screws. Once I get that done, I will be right back. And there we have it. I'm glad I did this off camera, because these screws that go in the back of the case here are very, very small. Yes, much magnification needed to install them, but success has been had. And as you can see, there it goes. And now we will attach the ribbon cable to the back. It's pretty straightforward. These far pins here, they're basically for setting the like these 4 here are for setting like IDE, master, I assume, and other features. We won't be using that. I believe leaving them unpopulated without jumpers, and it didn't come with any. It'll default to the master. So IDE master, and yeah. So I'll get this hooked up to the 1200, and we will see if this works as planned. Okay. So there's the compact flash card about to be replaced by the far more modern and maybe slightly superior mSATA, but yeah. One moment. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna just unplug it. It's easier, I'll just unplug it from the motherboard here. And put this aside slightly. And then I'm just gonna unplug it from here. Try to pull straight out so you don't bend the pin. So I'm just going to pull, of course, I'm going to pull it off like I just did. Excellent. I will now set this aside and I shall install it onto this. So the same idea, I'm going to put the red on this side, so closest to the front of the computer, I guess, if it's mounted in like this. And then, yeah, let me get that in here, make sure it doesn't get offset. This is always fun. It's a bit tight going in against this edge here, but it will fit. So I'm gonna try to use a bit of force, not too much. Of course, easier said than done. One moment. Okay, let me try. There we go. It's going to go in or not. Everything always works so well on camera, doesn't it? Yeah, let me struggle with this and I will be right back. Remember, be gentle. Don't want to damage this thing. Anyway, I'll return. Okay, it actually went much quicker once I was not trying to see exactly what I was doing. That almost made no sense. It was easier to do off camera, let me just say that. Okay, so I'm going to now plug this into the motherboard. Pin 1 closest to the front, it's also marked as such. Right there, pin 1. All right, so let me, yeah, we're good. And I will make sure it's lined up properly. And it looks like it is. It's very good. And it's always good to double check that it's lined up. Pin 1 is there. And of course, pin 1 is on this drive. Don't hook this upside down. I'm not sure what will happen to it, but it probably won't be good. Actually, from experience, when I have plugged in compact flashes backwards with the IDE to compact flash adapter, because there's really no electronics, I haven't seen anything horrible happen. But because this has electronics in it and it's going to be voltage sensitive, make sure you get this wired correctly. Pin 1 and pin 1. That's the bottom of the board, that's the top. Okay, that's it. So now it's installed. That's good. So let's see if it won't boot, of course, because there's nothing on it, but let's see if at least the Amiga powers up, right? Okay, so we will find that out very quickly. Let me hook up everything, make sure everything's connected properly, and I will be right back. So what we're going to do now is I just want to make sure that the Amiga powers up, and it will show the insert boot disk animation process. So we at least know the computer is still functioning and that this, you know, the mSATA is not preventing it from powering on or attempting the boot process. So now it's on. I just turned it on now, and it should time out in a few seconds. And there we go. We have the boot screen ready to install or boot off of a non-existent OS at the moment. So basically what it is I need to put an operating system on it. In this case, it's going to be 3.2.2.1, but I don't have any disks available to boot off a floppy, and I obviously do not at the moment have a CD-ROM to boot off the image. But there is another option, one that I highly recommend, and it's called the SDBox. Basically, it's a parallel SD interface. So basically it plugs into the parallel computer of the back of the Amiga, and it uses an SD card which is formatted to FAT32, that you can put all your images on. And of course, in this case, I have all the boot files required, the actual install for AmigaOS 3.2. So I'm going to show that to you right now. And here is the SDBox for the Amiga. So it basically fits on any Amiga that has an Amiga, standard parallel port. And so that's what's on the front here. On the top, you have the green, which is power, and then red, that is activity light. And then on the back, we have the SD card slot, which is here, and then the external power, which it requires, which is here. Yes, and that's pretty much it. There's some drivers that are required for it, which it comes with an install disk if you buy this. And for the purpose of this video, because I don't have an OS to boot to use the floppy, since the floppy is not booting, it does not boot off the floppy at all, I made it so it would boot, install the driver for this, get it up and running, and then we could actually install the OS after we partition the drive onto the Amiga 1200. So we shall see how that works. So we'll go from there. I will plug this into the back and show you how it's all hooked up, and we'll see how amazing this little device is, and maybe how amazing the mSATA will be once we get everything up and running. I will see you very shortly. Okay, so what you need is obviously the SDBox, which I have right here, a 5-volt USB power supply. It can be, as long as it's 1 amp minimum, that should be more than happy for it, or fine, I should say. And of course, it has to have the mini, the older style USB connection, not the micro, but the mini. So the larger, beefier connection to plug into the back of this. So let's get that done. So I will plug this into the back of that, and do all this with the Amiga off. Don't try to plug this in while it's powered on. It could cause horrible things to happen to these slightly older temperamental machines. Okay, so I plugged in, oops, here, what did I guys tell you? Let me not plug even this in. How about plug this in first into the back of the Amiga, then plug this in, then turn it on. Okay, so I'm going to actually do this properly. Do not plug this in, but plug this into the parallel port. It's going to vary depending on your Amiga where that's hiding, on the back of my Amiga 1200 or whatever your computer is. And this is always fun. One moment, please. I need to actually see what I'm doing. Any moment now. There we go. Okay, and I can plug that in nicely. So that is now plugged in, ready to go. Now I'm going to plug this into the power outlet. Okay, as you can see, both lights are on. It does that until the Amiga actually powers on, and you'll be able to see that there. Let me just zoom in a bit for you guys. Yeah, there we go, and perfect. And then I will now turn on the computer. And as you can see, the Amiga, of course, won't boot because there's nothing to boot off of. That the SDBox requires drivers, and of course the drivers are installed because, well, it doesn't self-boot or anything like that. So that is why I made this floppy disk. It has the drivers that came with the SDBox. Like I said, the SDBox disk does not boot. It just has the drivers, so you have to be in an OS environment for it to function. But because I have no OS and I need to access the files on here, the OS 3.2 full install that's on here with all the updates, I need to boot the computer. So I took the files from the SDBox disk, made a bootable disk, the one that you're looking at right now, and it will boot to Workbench, and as well, it will install the drivers for this in the process, and what that will give me is now an environment to install, or I guess first, partition this new drive here, and install AmigaOS 3.2. So I'm going to go to the capture device, and we're going to see how well that works. I will be right back. And now we are ready to boot off that disk that I showed previously, that has the SDBox drivers and the necessary files to get to the Workbench environment, so we can install OS 3.2, as well, of course, first partition the drive. So here we go. Disk is inserted. And right now on the SD box, the power light is the only one that's lit at the moment. The boot process continues, as it always does on a floppy disk. And now the activity light is red. It's flashing very quickly. So right now it's initializing and installing the drivers so we can access the SD card, which of course has AmigaOS 3.2 on it, which is what we need. It should be done any second now. And there we go. Now we are on the Workbench environment. As you can see, the SD0 boot is the disk, the floppy, I should say, that we just booted off of. And I put a copy of HD Toolbox on for ease of use. And look, lo and behold, we have the AmigaOS 3.2 CD as well. So everything here is installed with all the updates, everything. I put everything on here. Now you can put whatever you want on the SD card, but for my purpose, it's really nice to have the AmigaOS, no matter what version you want to install, because now with that boot disk that I made, which you can make, like I said, from the driver disk that comes with the SD box, you can basically put an OS on any Amiga on a brand new hard drive, compact flash, mSATA, whatever you want. So I'm going to close this window for now. Now we're going to see if the system recognizes this mSATA drive. So here we go. Hopefully the drive will show up, and we shall find out soon enough. Yeah, so far so good. If it was a failure, there would be nothing up here at all. This would be blank, but it does detect something. It says unknown because it has no idea what it is. All other options are grayed out because we have to define the drive definitions because it doesn't know how to handle the drive at the moment. So we're going to click on Change Drive Type. Of course, this is blank because, alas, there is no new drive in here, or previous drive definitions, I should say. So we're going to click on Define New. And of course right now it just says 21 megabytes, which is lies because, well, it doesn't know. We have to read the configuration. So this is just the stock setup. So we're going to click on Reconfiguration, and hopefully it will detect the real size of the drive and set up all the parameters for us. So here we go. And we will continue. Nice. 60 gigabytes. I know it's 64, but there's always overhead involved and other stuff. 60 gigabytes, I shall take that. Leave everything as is, and I will click OK. I must unwrite protect my disk. It has to write the drive definitions to something, and because I booted off of this drive, or sorry, the floppy, it wants to write it to the floppy. So I remove the write protection, and there we go. Excellent. And this looks really good. It actually gets recognized. I'm going to click OK. And now it shows up, drive type, name, everything. So now I can actually partition the drive. And there's a lot of space on here, 60 gigabytes. For an Amiga, that's a huge amount. What to do with it all, eh? Here we go. Partition drive. By default, it wants to do half of it. I think that's a bit overkill. Really can't do this without the keyboard, can I? I disconnected it. I will be right back while I attach said keyboard. One moment, please. Okay, let's try that again. So we will set the buffer to 800. We'll call this DH0. I will change, I don't want international mode. I'm going to change this to 1FE00 and drop this down to 512, just because it's a smaller drive. I'm not sure what the suggested largeness, I guess, of the partitions when you should go to 4096. I'm not sure, but to me, anything under, 2 gigabytes, 512 is fine. Anything over that, maybe you can start creeping it up. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about that. I have not tried enough. I'm sure somebody would be able to answer that for you, and for me for that matter. But anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked. So I set everything up there. I'm going to put this down to 500 gigabytes. That's 707, 606. The funny thing is, I wish you could zoom in on this because the drive is so large. It gets really, really picky here. That's 304. That's not enough. 405. So let's go to 1000, not 100, 1000. Okay, let's try 1006. Oh, getting closer. Oh, almost. Yeah, it's like fine tuning. There we go. We got our 500. I will click OK. Everything looks good. And I didn't have to get out of that. I can make another partition. And here we go. And I'll make that one, let's say 1 gigabyte or something like that. It's very sensitive. Oh, close. Same idea. Okay, try 48. It's almost like a game doing this. Oh, almost. We'll try 46. Okay. Now the size might vary slightly once you go to format it, but the same idea. I'm just going to change this and then change that. Keep them the same. I'm going to put this to 512 as well and turn off international mode. That looks good. And I need to make sure it's called DH1. Excellent. And click OK. So I'm going to basically mess around with others, add more partitions off camera, and when that's all done and I reboot the system and get everything prepared, we'll see if the OS will actually install and if this thing will boot. Yep. Okay. Anyway, I will be back shortly. Yeah, before we continue, there's one thing I forgot. To use large drives greater than 4 gigabytes on the Amiga, make sure that you have at least OS 3.1.4 in your system, because it will SCSI device and track disk device and all that recognizes 64-bit partition sizes. The older ones will only be 32-bit and they don't go past 4 gigabytes, at least on the Amiga side of things. And then 2 gigabyte partitions are the maximum. I think 4 gigabyte is the drive size, I believe. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's come to my understanding over the years. You can have OS 3.9 as well. It does a reboot, of course, and the advantage to make that happen, because it just loads, the updated modules into memory. But the good thing about having 3.1.4 and higher, it's native. It's in the ROM. So from just booting up, if you boot up just pre-Workbench, pre anything, just boot up into the Amiga shell, you have access to all the drives. There's nothing has to be loaded. There's no patching that has to be done. It's just raw, right from the code, and from the way everything is, set into ROM, you have access to, very large partition sizes, so you don't have to worry about it. Anyway, enough of that. I shall accept the changes. I will reboot, and I will be back with you at that time. I have returned. We are on the Workbench. I've successfully partitioned and formatted all of these drives. So system is roughly 500 megabytes. Work is roughly 1 gigabyte. 4 gigabytes for games, roughly. Sound is 15 gigabytes, and just backups, whatever, almost 40 gigabytes. So there we go. So let's see if we can install the OS on this and get it to boot. So let's go. Remember, this is using the SDBox. So you run it here, and then it's going to do the assign. So it's going to assign the CD to the SDBox. So let's double click on this. And there are many videos on YouTube on how to install AmigaOS 3.2, but this is going to be pretty quick, so I can see that the installation will succeed. So now I need to go into the install folder, click on Start Here as per the instructions, and it should create a virtual floppy on the desktop right here. I'll minimize that, and there we go. And we've already done this part. That's done already. So just go to Install and English, or whatever language you want. English is about the only one I can speak at the moment, or ever. Okay, click Proceed. Might as well install the full thing. Intermediate user, so at least I'm asked some questions. And I do not want to install this on my floppy drive. It won't fit. So you click No. I'm going to select the system drive. Much more room. It'd be the quickest install ever, and it would fail miserably. So system partition, which has at least 500 megabytes, so we're good to go. Click Proceed. Leave it English. Yeah, whatever. Printers. which I don't have. Might as well, everyone can join the party. Glow icons, really, should I? Why not? Okay. Checking system for obsolete files. There aren't any files. Ah, there's no T apparently. Cancel. Oh no! What have I done? This makes no sense. There was no T for some reason. Could not create a directory. Failed. Well then. Well, that's not supposed to happen, is it? It's probably something to do with the boot environment here. I don't have a T drive. Not T drive, you know what I mean? A T assign. Nope. Let's try this. And my M key does not work very well. So there's something I have to definitely fix in the boot here. Yeah, and need to assign T RAM T. So let's try this again. Assign T RAM T. It's just a temporary. I failed. You know, if I knew how to do this, it would be there. How about that? That will work. Okay, so we'll try this again. These signs are already done. You did not need to click on that. Sorry. Okay, and I don't even have to start here. This has all been done. It's already here. So let's just try to run the installer again and see if we get a failure or not. Okay, I'm going to go through the same steps as before. No, don't want to do that. Let's try this again. It should overwrite whatever it put on previously. And now it appears to be working, so that's good. So on the boot disk that I made here, I need to add the make directory T and assign T to RAM. And then it should work just fine. Because it's assuming that a sign was already made. Anyway, I'll pause this and I'll join you on the other end of the install. And here we are. We are at the end. And that went pretty quick actually. The parallel port is not the fastest transfer, but it's definitely faster than floppy for sure. Click proceed. And now it's going to reboot. I'm going to pop out the floppy. Let's see if it boots off of the SSD. So far so good, I guess. And there we go. The icons are jumbled around, but I can fix that no problem. And there we go. We have installation running on the mSATA drive in replacement of the compact flash. And as you can see, booting off of the SDBox, not booting off, sorry, installing the OS off the SDBox works just fine. Just need to fix the floppy, the boot floppy I made to include the T assign to RAM, so it didn't fail like that, because it assumed obviously it would be there. And that's it. So it seems to work just fine. I guess I could do some speed tests on this, but I don't seem to have sysinfo kicking around on floppy anywhere. Let me go find that disk and we'll just see how fast the drive is. It should be around at least 2 to 3 depending on the accelerators in here. This is the an 020, so it should be at least 1.8 or higher megabytes per second. So let me get sysinfo. Actually, what I can do is I can put sysinfo on the SD card. That's what I can do, and mount that. Anyway, enough rambling. I will be back shortly and we'll do a quick speed test. Okay, well, I have to confess, out of bout of laziness, it was just easier to throw sysinfo on an existing floppy that I had. To get it on, I could copy it, by the time it took me to copy it to the SD card on my PC and then get the drivers installed in this OS, 3.2 that we put on here, yeah, it would take a lot longer than just throwing it on here. But anyway, enough of that. Let's run sysinfo and see what speeds we actually get. I believe that this is an 020 running at 40 megahertz roughly. I think it reports it a bit higher, but it gets about 7 MIPS, and it says 46. I think it's closer to 40 in reality, but that's just a CPU speed, so that seems about right. Out of experience with a compact flash, I think I'm usually around 2.5. It's hard to say, but anything above 2 isn't too bad, especially considering what's running. So let's click on speed and see how fast the mSATA drive is. And that's not bad, really. 3.3. I think that's actually a bit faster than compact flash, to be honest with you. I'd have to do an apples to apples comparison. I'd have to get this thing installed on this exact version of the install, basically duplicated onto a compact flash, and then try the same thing. But take my word for it, it is a bit, I think, higher than a compact flash is. So it's not too bad, not too bad at all. So on a really good accelerated Amiga, this should perform fairly well. So that pretty much wraps this up, I think. I'll get off this capture card now, and I do apologize for the audio. You'll hear a bit of a hum. I don't know what it's coming from. I'm using the same mic that I use on the camera, but it must be coming from the capture device or the computer itself I'm attached to. But anyway, I will join you on the non-capture card feed in one moment. And now we are at the end of the video. So there you can see the mSATA, the M.2 SSD installed in here, and it's nice and protected. And in its own case, you have the savior of the day for installing an OS or any other files you want quick access to, the SDBox. And yeah, I guess that's it. Sorry it's been a while since I've done a video. It's been kind of busy and work related stuff, and all that fun life things that happen from time to time. Anyway, but if you like this video, please give a thumbs up. It helps recommend this to other people that might be interested in such things. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. I do appreciate anyone who watches this video, subscribers or not. But if you subscribe, it'll whenever my videos come out, you'll be able to see them whenever they come. And speaking of which, please click on the notification icon as well. So because my videos are very random in nature, you'll be alerted whenever one does haphazardly make its appearance on the internet. And that is it. And as always, thanks for watching.